All righty then. The main event that we've all been waiting for what Chris Jericho termed the AEW World Title, for what everybody else has termed the AEW Interim World Title, because there's still a real champion floating around out there somewhere, CM Punk. And Jericho is going to fight Plumber Moxley for this prestigious interim championship. And do you think Jericho's heard any of the criticism? He took Judas away from him. He didn't play Judas. He switched up the music. He didn't want him singing along. Or does he want us to think that he didn't want him singing along, but really he missed it more than he misses his mother's kiss?
I think it was more that he was trying to play up that this is the mid-90s ECW Chris Jericho. That's why he was wearing what he was wearing. He looked good out there, too. I gotta say, I like this version of Chris Jericho more than every other version we've seen in quite a long time. But I think that's why the music, I could be wrong, but I would think that's why the music specifically was what it was.
So we want to go back to remind people when Chris Jericho was in an underground promotion that never actually broke even or made a profit and was on limited television, when just several years later he was the world champion for the biggest promotion in the history of the world. That's not the area of time we want to remember. We want to go back to ECW. Okie dokie.
Everyone loves a struggling young artist.
So is Plumber Moxley, who came through the crowd again, and they had the big fight introductions and et cetera, to eat up some time because Jericho was fucking gassed through this. If they'd have tried to go 30, I think there may have been a fatality. But is Moxley going to go ahead and trademark giving people the finger? Because that's now he's going to blatantly just say, fuck it, I'm embracing this. I'm a Stone Cold Steve Austin cosplayer. I'm going to go all the way with it. How many fingers did we see from Moxley on national television in this one, not segment, but one episode, one match on the program of a couple of segments?
Well, he is a rebel. He's from Cincinnati. And one of the things that is interesting when you bring this up is
Cincinnati Rebels. I've just got that one.
Yeah, Mitchell Guzin over there. If he went to trademark giving people the finger, do you think he would bleed in the process?
Well, he does when you look crossways at him. He bleeds. He just erupts in blood. And you're right, he's a rebel and he'll never be any good. He's a rebel and he'll never act like he should. They tried to start out wrestling a world title style match. I will give them that. They tried. There was the plan to do it. They were trying to imitate Flair and Steamboat, Funk and Briscoe. There were arm drags. There was wrestling involved. A world championship style match from long ago when people still did such a thing. But one guy's a 50-year-old wannabe rock star and the other one looks like a mechanic from Secaucus. So, I mean, Jericho, were you talking about him looking good in that physically, with the hair's not dyed a noticeable dark shade that doesn't match him anymore, and he's lost his weight, but goddamn, was this good wrestling? Are my standards just too high these days?
I didn't say that. It was certainly a spectacle. I mean, once you realize that Jericho busted his face up again, the second match in a row you've seen that, I started feeling bad for the guy. I really did.
Well, but he keeps doing it to himself. Here's the first. He wasn't the first one busted open, though. They try to wrestle. I was giving him points for effort, but then Jericho makes an obvious show to everybody and the camera of tearing the earring out of Moxley's ear. Well, good. Why was he wearing it? That doesn't give me sympathy for a babyface, because first thing you learn is don't wear jewelry in a goddamn wrestling match or a fight. But they go to the break on that because basically he tears the earring out of Moxley's ear. Moxley rolls out on the floor selling the ear. And they go to the break, and apparently Moxley in the break or somehow bladed his ear. And he was bleeding profusely from what was alleged to be a torn out earring, to the point where Regal was on commentary and had to say, well, you bleed more from, I can't do his accent, you bleed more from the ear because of all the capillaries and the cartilage or whatever. They were trying to explain how the fuck you could tear an earring out of a guy's ear and have his head half covered in blood. It was ridiculous. And again, now they try to wrestle some more, but with all the blood and being on this show, it looks like, and being Moxley, it looks like every other garbage match you see. And the longer it went, the more it looked like Jericho was underwater. I mean, he was, again, taking the shortcuts where you don't follow through with everything. And I understand age is a factor, but he was in quicksand. And did you see the figure 4 around the post?
I did.
Did you know what was wrong with it? Or are you that versed in the figure 4 around the post?
What was wrong with it?
Everybody, if you want to go back and look at this, when Jericho pulls Moxley out like he's going to crotch him on the post, right? He pulls his crotch right to the ring post. Jericho's standing on the floor. And remember, Bret Hart patented the figure 4 around the ring post. And he used to do it, I said, in the WWF, guys like Shawn or Austin or whatever. And what he'd do is he would clue the referee in to stand behind him like he was trying to get Bret to break it up. But actually, when Bret throws his second leg up over to get the figure 4 on, if the referee was not behind him, he would fall backwards and crack the back of his head on the floor. And that's what he claimed in the Goldberg match happened before the kick, was that he told Goldberg to hold on to that leg and hold him so he could ease himself down. And Goldberg didn't do it. And Bret cracked the back of his head on the floor. Well, in this case, Jericho pulls Moxley around the post, and he put the wrong leg up first. He did it backwards, and there was no way to save it. Bret would put the left leg up in between the guy's right leg and the ring post and hold on to that as he crossed it over, and then with his right leg, he would jump up and hook it over the guy's foot and apply the figure 4 and fall backwards. Jericho put the figure 4 leg up over the guy's foot first and then tried to put the left leg up, and there's no way to get it in. And he just fell backwards and didn't have a hold and cracked his head on the floor. So it's completely backwards, and it botched it. And then somewhere he couldn't figure out how to, you could tell when he put the wrong leg up first, he was looking and he couldn't figure it out. And he said, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. Right. But somehow after this, within just a short time after this, Moxley was bleeding from the head also. Did you ever see Moxley get hit with anything or take a head shot that would cause him to bleed from the head as well as the ear?
I wasn't sure where any of the blood was coming from at various points, because at one point, and it may have been the one you referenced earlier, Moxley had it by his forehead, and they were explaining that, oh, that's coming from his ear. And I was like, how the hell would it go from his ear to his forehead? Even if it shot out, it wouldn't go that way.
Well, it was he laid down, if you blade your ear, obviously the ear does bleed. And if you blade your ear, it's going to bleed more than if you pull a fucking earring out of the lobe. He bladed it somewhere, and it was bleeding around his jaw toward his mouth area, and that got on the side of his head. But then later on, he was plainly covered in blood on the top of his head from a different source. Meanwhile, I wrote, this has taken forever already. We're 12 minutes into this fucking thing. And then they do, Mox at one point, he throws multiple fake punches to the vicinity of Jericho's head. It's like they get down close and they just throw stuff and they think the camera will never see this. And then Jericho, this was the one that got me. Jericho goes and pulls one of the turnbuckle pads off. And of course, the referee is Dawn Aubrey Stevens. So she goes to put it back on, and he goes and he pulls another one off. And she's fucking with that, and it falls to the floor. So she goes out to the floor to get the loose turnbuckle pad. And JR said something that felt, well, I'm not a fan of the referee going to the floor, because right then, while the referee has gotten out of the ring to retrieve a turnbuckle pad that one of the participants has untied and it's fallen out there. I mean, there's no ring crew. There's no production assistants. It falls on the referee alone to go get that thing. Jericho motions to the crowd. Sammy Guevara is suddenly in the crowd and has a baseball bat. And he throws it into the ring, and my God, it wasn't like Jericho fumbled it. It's like he would have had to have had a 9-foot vertical leap to get this thing. Sammy overshot him with a baseball bat all the way over his head, behind him in the ring and out on the other side of the floor. Now, Jericho's got to run out to the floor to get it, and they get a shot of Sammy, and he's going, oh, shit. It was a perfect, oh, shit, what have I done? And the referee, old Don Aubrey Stevens, is walking back and forth to and fro with her back turned to the entire ring, carrying loose turnbuckle pads so she doesn't have to see this while she's waiting for Jericho to chase this goddamn itinerant bat down. And Moxley's staggering around, looking over his shoulder, waiting to get hit with it. If anybody thinks I'm lying, just go back and watch this. And finally, Jericho uses a baseball bat, like everybody does, grabs one end in one hand and one end in the other hand, and pokes Moxley in the head with it, and covers him and gets a 2 count. And then Moxley, after being hit with a baseball bat in the head, comes back and gets a choke, and Jericho is so gassed that he just twisted, basically, and to shoot him off. And Moxley runs he runs 10 feet to the corner and runs his own head into the exposed turnbuckle from a shrug. It wasn't a shoot off, it was a shrug off. But somehow his head made a beeline, like there was a tracking device. And then Jericho hits the Judas. So now Moxley's been run into an exposed turnbuckle and hit with the former world champion's finish that always gets its man, 2 count. So then Jericho gets the title belt, now this time in front of the referee, in the ring with the belt. It's okay, he's actually not going to hit the guy. That's how they reconcile this nonsense. He's not going to hit the guy, so it shouldn't be a DQ. Overlooking that for 80 years, if you were caught in the ring with a foreign object, whether you used it or not, it was a DQ. So he gets the belt, he staggers to Moxley, Moxley sidesteps, and Jericho runs his own face into the exposed turnbuckle that he's the one that took the pad off of it, so he knows better than anybody that it was bare, and he busts his own head open hard way. Wide open, gushing blood. And now as he hits the goddamn buckle and he comes out, Moxley gets a choke, and now there's Jericho realizing he's already bleeding, and he's putting his hand up to his head like, what the fuck did I do? A lot of people are going to say, oh, that's where he was getting his color. No, he was already colored. This was a flat palm like, oh my God, is my brain going to fall out? And Moxley's got the choke, and Jericho gets out of that, and he gets the Walls of Jericho, or the Lion Tamer, since we're going retro. And Moxley gets out of that and gets a choke back and holds it forever. And both of them are motionless. And all the intensity is drained out of the thing. And then Jericho tapped out. And by this point, all of Moxley's blood that he looked like he'd been goddamn thrown through a screen door and was in little pieces, it's all dried up, and Jericho is taking a bath in his blood from his unexpected hard way. Have I got this so far? Are you following me here, Brian?
Oh, yeah, I watched it. I saw the whole thing.
So then here comes Sammy Hagar.
Jake Hagar.
No, Sammy Hagar. Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager.
Oh, that's right.
Sammy Hagar. They come in, and Jericho has got a T-shirt from somebody and is holding a fucking compress on his goddamn head before he bleeds out and starts seeing the angel Gabriel in another life. And they're trying to get heat on Moxley. But here comes Claudio and Ortiz. Santana nowhere to be seen. Is he still around? Here comes Yuta and Kingston. So now they have this giant fake fight where everybody's throwing fake punches and fake kicks. And the baby faces outnumber the heels 5-3. But then suddenly here comes Daniel Garcia and Daddy Mac Daddy and Cool Hand Luke, and they do more fake fighting. Have you ever seen more supposedly trained professional wrestlers throw more fake looking shit that you can see daylight through a mile away than these brawls that they have on AEW? It's embarrassing.
It happens a lot, especially and it's with the same people over and over too.
And finally, Jericho gets the belt, the title belt, and they hold Moxley up. And they hold Moxley up. And they hold Moxley up because the sound man's trying to find that button. And finally, like Mussolini, thank fuck he's back. Because if I had to watch any more of these shows without him, I was going to crack. Here comes Punk. And for 45 seconds, again, we were transported back to a wrestling program. Because here comes CM Punk, the returning champion, the conquering hero. He's running down the ramp. The people are blowing. It's a big pop. He makes a big comeback. All the heels bump for him. It's laid out perfectly. Old Cool Hand Luke meets him in the entranceway. One shot and a big bump. And Sammy tries to plunge over the ropes, and Punk sidesteps him and grabs him and shovels him into the stairs. Rolls into the ring, backdrops Hager over the top, lays waste to the other guy with the fat face or whoever the fuck it was. And then Jericho takes 2 bumps and he bails out. So he went up the pecking order. And finally Jericho's gone and Punk rules the ring and the heels are backpedaling. And that part was great. It was executed well. It was laid out well. It got a pop. It got the people up after all this dreariness. And then there's the little matter of the current interim champion sitting in the fucking ring. And except I don't understand why Moxley was, while Punk was keeping an eye on the heels, Moxley is behind Punk, not looking at Punk, but acknowledging that he knows Punk is behind him and making faces of somebody like, yeah, I know what's going on. Whatever, like, I think he was trying to kill the deal. I don't think he likes having, I think since Moxley believes he's a blood-drinking vampire and a goddamn crazy pain freak lunatic.
I will come to your house and there'll be glass and blood everywhere.
Yeah, I'll come to your house and stick thumbtacks in your elbow. I don't think he liked the idea of being saved by a bigger star that's more popular and draws more money and is more accomplished performer, because he was making faces behind it. And that didn't fucking set well to me, because it looked like he was diminishing or making mockery of what was going on instead of trying to get it over. But nevertheless, he stands up, he turns around, they go face to face, Punk and Plumber Moxley, and Moxley gives Punk the finger in his face and walks off. If we hadn't seen 6 or 7 other fingers on this show alone from Moxley and others, it would have meant something. But as it was, the end of the show was Moxley slunk off to snake a drain, and Punk got a standing ovation in the crowd, who now has reason to live because Punk is back on television. Your thoughts on this whole deal, Brian Last?
The match was really something, and I want to ask you a question after we're done to a review that relates to all this, but, you know, it started with a gruesome match and it ended with a gruesome match. I don't know if CM Punk saved...
There's another thing. Why in the world would they do the fucking blood in the first segment when they knew they were going to have, even though part of the blood in the last segment, the world title match, wasn't planned, they still had some planned. Why the fuck? Why can they not control themselves? I'm just going to say one more thing and I'll let you have it. I'll be goddamned if there was a wrestling show in history where another manager on the card was going to bleed. I'll be goddamned if I would have got juice. I mean, I don't understand why they don't have a problem with going out there and cutting themselves open when somebody else has already done it, so it doesn't even mean anything. Go ahead. What the fuck?
I don't know if CM Punk saved Moxley from Jericho as much as he saved all of us from this show. When he came out there, the pop, the reaction, it was like a real star has finally returned to the show. Based on the way they left the ring, it makes me wonder if they're setting up Moxley and Claudio in that group as heels, which can only be better than them as baby faces. I'm glad Danielson's not there, because at least he's not a part of their thing.
Is he hurt again, or where was he?
I think they're getting over that he got choked out by Garcia, right? He's going to speak on the Friday show.
Oh, good God. That should be best left never spoken of again to where people would forget it.
Punk being back makes me look forward to hearing what he's going to say next week on the show, thinking he probably is going to have to say something. FTR appearing on the show randomly again this week makes me hopeful that maybe they'll appear randomly next week as well. But there's been a lot of crap on these shows. It's been a rough slog for a while now watching AEW TV. And the question I wanted to ask you, it just so happened this episode had the first match and the last match like this, but specifically every single Moxley match lately, and there's been other guys too. Jericho now, I mean, he couldn't have predicted he was going to break his nose. But
or bust his head open in this one.
Are we seeing too much blood? Is there way too much blood on this show?
Yes. And here's something else. A lot of people are going, oh, Cornette, you pick and choose. Why, Starrcade 86 or the Great American Bash such and such, well, everybody bled. It was horrible. Well, I agree with you. It was too much. Dusty was a little too much with Juice. And that was even 35 years ago when it was a different animal. But those shows were the biggest show of the year, with most of the angles blowing off and culminating, and stipulation matches that you didn't see on a regular basis because they were the big shows. But if you, and a lot of people will go back, well, look at the house shows. I'm watching this house show on YouTube and this guy's bleeding and that guy's, well, yeah, because the only people that saw the house show in Oklahoma City were the people in Oklahoma City that were there and bought a ticket that night. On television, with the biggest audience, the mass audience, you didn't have blood on TV unless it was going to mean something, unless it was integral to an angle or starting a program. And then depending on how, fucking anal the local athletic commission was, or if the television station had specifically said, well, we don't want any of that stuff or whatever, you did what you could do. And a lot of places, blood was accepted on television wrestling because it wasn't a constant thing. You didn't see it all the time for the same reason that it meant more when you saw it sparingly, because then it registered and it was a shocking occurrence and it added to the angle to draw money. You didn't want to test your goddamn television station every week. What's the chance that in some fucking old blue-haired woman in Roanoke sees blood 2 weeks in a row and think, well, they're going to ruin my children's fucking psyche, and calls and complains or whatever. It's just meaningless. They're doing this on television every week, and the biggest audience sees blood constantly. So if you go to do it on a pay-per-view or at a big show, it's no departure. It's no different. It's no more violent. It's not like, oh, shit, I'm glad we paid for this pay-per-view because we couldn't see this on TV. It's too much. No. The TV is as goddamn gruesome and gory and fucking zany as any other show you could put on that you would charge money for people to see. So and not even getting into, as we've mentioned many times, the advertisers. And if Tony was smart, he could position himself to where at least this company is one that the TV stations could go to in a couple of years to tell the WWE, well, if you don't play ball with us and give us a deal, we'll put these other yahoos on. At least they're a negotiating tool. He could get closer. Something strange may happen. He could end up with a network slot. But not if the network says, well, we would try to make these other guys bid against the WWE, but goddamn, we can't fucking show that circus sideshow geek porn on our network. So I don't understand. It's smart mark booking. They're all smart marks. The boys are smart marks and the owner's a smart mark. And what are they going to be doing in 2 years from now this time? Summer of 2024. Loser must be disemboweled on live television and the entrails made into birthday party decorations for their opponent's children. What the fuck? That's what I think about it.